It started with a letter, the kind of letter nobody wants to get. Official looking, typed on crisp letterhead, and dripping with legal jargon that made my stomach tighten. The Cedar Ridge Homeowners Association, HOA, was claiming ownership of a portion of my driveway. My driveway. That gravel path I'd spent years maintaining, widening, and personally grading to make sure the snowplows could get through every winter. The road I drove my truck up every day, the path that connected my cabin to the outside world. They said, according to a recent survey they commissioned, that part of my driveway encroached on HOA property, a sliver of land no wider than 3 feet, but enough, they claimed, to demand I stop using it. Worse, they wanted me to remove the gravel and restore the land to its original state, or else face fines, legal action, and possibly a forced easement. I read the letter twice, then a third time. It couldn't be real. I lived on the edge of Cedar Ridge, a quiet community nestled in the woods, surrounded by pines and whispering winds. The HOA wasn't usually the type to pick fights, at least not this aggressive. They mostly handled landscaping rules and annual dues, nothing like this. I knew the driveway had been there before most of the houses were built, part of an old logging route, if the town archives were right. My family had lived here for decades, and the driveway had always been a lifeline. Now the HOA wanted to take it away. I called my neighbor, Ellis, who had a thick beard and an even thicker stubborn streak. "You seeing this?" I asked him. He frowned. "Those HOA types love to poke at anything that's not nailed down." "You sure they aren't just trying to squeeze you for some cash?" "I don't know, but they're serious. And I'm not just going to give up my driveway without a fight." I started digging through old property records, tax maps, even my father's faded photographs. Every clue pointed to the driveway being mine, or at least part of my property line. The HOA's survey had to be wrong, or maybe it was a convenient excuse. I reached out to the HOA board requesting a meeting. I wanted to see their evidence and negotiate, but instead they sent back a terse reply. "The board's decision is final. Use of the disputed driveway section is prohibited effective immediately." That was it. No room for discussion. I felt trapped. Without that stretch of driveway, my cabin would be effectively cut off, forcing me to park miles away and hike in with groceries and tools. Impossible, really. That's when I started brainstorming. If I couldn't use the driveway the way it was, what else could I do? The idea struck me like a lightning bolt. What if I could make the driveway impassable, but legally? I'd heard about creative property defenses, fences, gates, even water features that technically didn't block access but made it very clear who was in charge. I began researching zoning laws, local ordinances, and property rights. Could I build a moat? A small one, sure. Nothing crazy that flooded the neighborhood or harmed the environment, but enough to keep vehicles out. Better yet, what if I built an automatic bridge over it? Something I could control remotely, so my family and I could come and go freely, but nobody else could use it without permission. It sounded wild, maybe even ridiculous, but it was the kind of wild that might just work. And as I learned later, it was 100% legal. I was about to enter a war with the HOA, but this time I had a secret weapon. The moment I decided to fight back, the atmosphere changed. What started as a cold letter turned into an all-out war, a clash between a single homeowner and a powerful homeowners association with deep pockets and plenty of rules. After sending my polite but firm response to the HOA, challenging their claim and demanding proof, I waited, but the response wasn't what I expected. Instead of meeting me halfway or clarifying their position, the HOA doubled down. I got another letter, this one more aggressive, threatening fines for unauthorized use of HOA property. and warning me that they would take all necessary legal action to protect the community's interests. Their tone made it clear. They wanted me gone. But I wasn't about to back down. I hired a surveyor to get an independent assessment of my property lines. The surveyor was a grizzled veteran who had worked in land disputes before. When he showed me his maps and reports, it was clear. The disputed section of the driveway was indeed part of my property. According to the deed and the county records, the HOA's claim was unfounded. Armed with this new evidence, I sent a letter back to the HOA, demanding they retract their claim and cease harassment. I also copied it to the local zoning board and the county clerk's office. The HOA didn't respond. Instead, things escalated. One morning, I arrived at my driveway to find large orange cones blocking the disputed section. A freshly printed sign declared, "Access prohibited, HOA property." I was stunned. They had unilaterally blocked access without any legal order, just to force me to stop using my own driveway. I removed the cones. The next day, they reappeared, along with a security camera pointed directly at my property. My phone rang late one evening. It was the HOA's attorney. "I advise you to cease using the disputed driveway immediately," the lawyer said coldly. "Continued trespass will result in legal action." I held my ground. "I have legal proof the driveway is mine," I said firmly. "I'm not trespassing." The lawyer scoffed. "We'll see what the court says." That was when I realized this wouldn't be settled at the negotiation table. This was a legal battle. I began gathering documents, property deeds, surveys, photos, and correspondence with the HOA. I also researched laws on easements, property rights, and HOA authority. I learned that HOAs can be powerful, but not all-powerful. Their power is limited by the law and the community's governing documents. And if they overreach, homeowners have recourse. Still, the emotional toll was heavy. I found myself pacing late at night, frustrated and exhausted. I loved my cabin. I loved the peace of the woods, the sound of the wind in the trees, the quiet hum of nature. And now some faceless board was trying to take that away. But I wasn't alone. Ellis, my neighbor and ally, showed up one afternoon with a tool belt and a determined look. "We're not going to let 'em push you around," he said. "I've got your back." Together, we started brainstorming ways to protect my access, ways that were legal, creative, and maybe a little unorthodox. Ellis had ideas, like reinforced gates and cameras. I had one bigger idea: the moat. At first, Ellis laughed. "A moat? Like a castle?" "Exactly," I said. "Only this moat will have an automatic bridge I control. No one gets through without me." We both laughed, but there was a spark in it. The moat wasn't just a joke. It was a symbol of reclaiming control. Word about the driveway dispute started spreading in the neighborhood. Some people sympathized, others sided with the HOA. The community meetings became heated, with accusations flying and lines being drawn. The HOA held a special meeting to discuss the situation. I was invited, but it felt like a trap. They questioned me aggressively, demanding I surrender the driveway and threatening to suspend my HOA privileges. I stood my ground, calmly explaining the legal facts and my rights. The tension in the room was palpable. At the end of the meeting, they voted to escalate the matter, authorizing their attorney to file suit if necessary. I knew this was going to be costly and stressful, but I was ready. The battle over my driveway had truly begun, and I was determined to win. The battle with the HOA was heating up, but I refused to let frustration cloud my judgment. I needed a plan, and that meant understanding the full scope of my legal rights. So I dove headfirst into research. At first, it felt overwhelming. Mountains of documents, legal jargon thicker than the pine forests around my cabin, and the never-ending labyrinth of HOA bylaws and local ordinances. But slowly, piece by piece, things started to click. I learned that HOAs have broad powers, but those powers aren't unlimited. They exist to maintain the community's aesthetic and property values, but they can't arbitrarily claim or restrict use of private property without due process. What the HOA was doing, trying to seize a portion of my driveway without proper legal backing, was borderline at best and illegal at worst. Then I found something even better, a loophole. Hidden deep within the county zoning codes was a clause that allowed property owners to maintain certain types of structures or features on their land that didn't violate safety or environmental regulations, even if those features effectively controlled access. In other words, I could build barriers, fences, or other legal obstructions to protect my property, so long as they met specific criteria. The idea sparked a new level of excitement. A moat, a mini-moat no bigger than a garden pond, could fit within those rules. It wouldn't flood the area or harm the environment. It would just create a physical boundary. Better yet, the same regulations permitted automated bridge systems over such water features, provided they met safety and mechanical standards. I could build an automatic bridge that only I could operate. It sounded like something out of a medieval castle story, but here I was, ready to bring it to life. I met with a local contractor who specialized in landscaping and small water features. He was skeptical at first, eyebrows raised. "A moat, huh? Not something you hear every day," he said with a chuckle. "But if you want it legal and functional, it's gotta be well engineered." Together we worked out a plan. A narrow trench dug across the disputed section of the driveway, lined and filled with water sourced from a natural spring on the property. A sturdy wooden bridge, fitted with an electric motor and remote controls, would span the moat. I imagined pulling up in my truck, pressing a button on a key fob, and watching the bridge lower just for me. The best part? The moat would physically block unauthorized vehicles, including anyone the HOA might try to send, but wouldn't violate any local laws. This wasn't just a barricade, it was a statement, and it was fully legal. Armed with blueprints, legal opinions, and a clear plan, I sent a detailed letter to the HOA. I laid out my intentions. The moat and automatic bridge would be built within the property boundaries, comply with all regulations, and ensure safe access for my family and guests. I invited them to review the plans and promised transparency. The response was predictable. Silence. The HOA was clearly unprepared for this level of pushback. Meanwhile, I reached out to the county zoning office to double-check compliance. They reviewed the plans, raised a few technical questions, but ultimately approved the project. That gave me the green light. But I knew the real fight wasn't over. The HOA could still challenge the project, try to delay permits, or create hurdles. I needed allies. I started talking to neighbors, sharing my plan and explaining the legal foundation. Some were intrigued, others wary, but most appreciated the creativity and the commitment to preserving my property rights. Ellis, ever my steadfast supporter, even started calling me the Moat Man in jest. The nickname stuck. While the HOA plotted their next move, I focused on preparation. I ordered materials, lined up contractors, and started clearing the area. The moat wasn't just about blocking access, it was about reclaiming control over my land on my terms. And for the first time since this whole nightmare began, I felt a surge of hope. I had found a loophole, yes, but more importantly, I had found a way forward. The moment I had the legal green light to build a moat, my mind raced with possibilities. I knew this had to be more than just a ditch filled with water. It had to be practical, safe, and above all, unmistakably mine. a clear message that the driveway was private property, protected by more than just signs and threats. Designing the mini moat wasn't easy. I had never built anything like it before. But after weeks of research, phone calls, and meetings with engineers, landscapers, and even a few bridge builders, a plan began to take shape. First, I had to decide on the moat's size. It couldn't be so wide or deep that it would cause drainage problems or flooding, nor could it become a hazard to kids or pets in the neighborhood. The challenge was to find the sweet spot, big enough to stop vehicles, but manageable enough to maintain and safe for everyone. After consulting with a local environmental engineer, we settled on a trench about 6 feet wide and 2 feet deep. The bottom would be lined with a heavy-duty waterproof liner to hold the water steady, fed by a natural spring on my property that ensured a constant flow. To keep it environmentally friendly, the water would be circulated with a small pump and filtered regularly to prevent stagnation and mosquito breeding. Next came the design of the bridge. This had to be the showpiece, sturdy, automated, and reliable. The bridge would span the moat's width and be wide enough to allow my truck and visitors' vehicles to cross comfortably. After evaluating several options, I decided on a motorized drawbridge system inspired by medieval designs but updated with modern technology. The bridge would be controlled remotely via a secure key fob, allowing me to raise and lower it at will. The materials had to be durable, weather-resistant wood for the deck, reinforced steel for the frame, and waterproof electric motors protected in sealed housings. Safety was paramount. The bridge would include sensors to prevent it from lowering if anything or anyone was underneath, and an emergency manual override in case of power failure. The design process was meticulous. I worked with a structural engineer who ran load tests and ensured the bridge could handle heavy trucks without warping or breaking. We incorporated LED lighting along the edges for nighttime visibility and added sturdy railings to prevent accidents. While the engineering plans were being drawn up, I started prepping the site. Clearing brush, marking boundaries, and digging preliminary trenches. The work was hard and physical, but every shovelful of earth felt like a step closer to reclaiming my driveway. My neighbors watched with a mix of curiosity and skepticism. Some thought the whole idea was over the top. Others admired the creativity. Ellis pitched in, wielding a shovel and a chainsaw, proving that the Moat Man wasn't just a nickname. It was a commitment. Beyond the technical aspects, I realized this moat was also a psychological barrier. It was a way to say, this is my land, this is my right, and I will defend it, legally and creatively. That mindset gave me strength. Not everyone was thrilled. The HOA sent a representative to inspect the construction site once excavation began. They took pictures, asked questions, and left with a polite but firm warning. Proceed at your own risk. I wasn't deterred. Every bolt tightened, every board secured was a step toward winning the battle. And when the first section of the moat was filled with water, I felt a surge of triumph. It wasn't just a trench anymore. It was a statement. The final design also included signage, elegant, clear, and professional, warning trespassers that unauthorized access was prohibited and that the moat and bridge were private property. As the project progressed, I documented everything. Photos, videos, invoices, permits, a detailed record in case the HOA tried to claim the moat was illegal or unsafe. I wanted to be prepared for any challenge. By the time the framework for the bridge arrived, the moat was a shimmering ribbon of water cutting across my driveway. Neighbors stopped by, some with smiles, some with raised eyebrows. I welcomed questions and shared the vision. This was about property rights, but also about community respect. And finally, after weeks of construction, testing, and tweaks, the moat and automatic bridge were ready. Standing back and watching the bridge raise and lower smoothly with the press of a button, I felt a rush of pride and relief. The perfect defense was built, creative, legal, and impossible to ignore. Now it was time to see how the HOA would respond. The day we broke ground on the moat was one I'll never forget. The morning air was crisp, the pine needles still sparkling with dew, and a faint scent of earth and wood lingered in the air. This wasn't just another landscaping project. It was my declaration of independence. The HOA's demands, the locked gates, the legal threats. They had pushed me to this point. Building a moat wasn't merely about defense. It was about reclaiming control over my property in a way they couldn't ignore or challenge easily. Before a single shovel hit the dirt, I made sure every I was dotted and every T crossed. The county zoning office had already approved the plans, but I wanted to double-check. I scheduled a meeting with the local building inspector and brought along copies of my permits, engineering drawings, and legal opinions supporting the project. The inspector, a no-nonsense woman named Karen, walked the site with me, inspecting the land, the surrounding drainage, and the environmental impact. She asked sharp questions. Will this affect neighboring properties? What about water runoff? How will you prevent erosion? I answered each question carefully, emphasizing the eco-friendly water circulation system and the natural spring feeding the moat. I showed her the plan for erosion control: reinforced liner, carefully graded slopes, and native plants around the edges to stabilize the soil. After a thorough review, Karen nodded and gave me the go-ahead. Just keep us updated and be sure to comply with all safety codes, she said. With legal clearance in hand, the real work began. Ellis and I rented a small backhoe, and with the help of a few trusted neighbors, we started digging the trench across the disputed section of the driveway. The sound of the machine breaking ground was strangely satisfying. Every scoop of earth removed was a step toward reclaiming my access. The digging wasn't easy. Roots from old trees tangled in the soil, rocks resisted the bucket, and the land wasn't perfectly level. We had to constantly adjust the trench to keep the water flow smooth and prevent pooling or flooding. I kept a close eye on every detail. I made sure the trench was exactly 6 feet wide and 2 feet deep, just as planned, lined with a durable waterproof membrane to hold the water steady. We installed an underground drainage system to channel excess water away safely. Once the trench was ready, we began lining it with river rocks and planting native grasses and wildflowers along the edges, both for aesthetics and to help prevent erosion. I wanted the moat to look natural, not like some artificial barrier. Meanwhile, the electrical contractor arrived to install the motorized system for the bridge. It was a complex setup: wires routed underground, sensors calibrated, and the remote control programmed with encrypted signals to prevent interference. The bridge itself was constructed off-site by a local woodworker known for his precision and craftsmanship. When it arrived, it was beautiful, solid yet elegant, with smooth wood planks and sturdy steel supports. Installing the bridge was a delicate operation. We had to anchor it securely on either side of the moat, ensuring perfect alignment for smooth raising and lowering. Once installed, we ran test after test, watching the bridge lift gracefully with the press of a button, then settle back in place. There were glitches: a sensor that needed adjustment, a motor that overheated on the second day. But each was resolved quickly. Throughout the construction, I documented every step. Photos, videos, receipts, and correspondence filled a binder labeled Moat Project. I knew this record could be vital if the HOA tried to challenge the moat's legality or safety. One afternoon, just as the moat was filling with water and the bridge was undergoing final tests, an unexpected visitor arrived: the HOA president, Mr. Carlyle. He stood at the edge of the moat, arms crossed, a scowl on his face. I have to say, I didn't expect you to actually go through with this, he said, voice low and tense. I promised I would protect my property, I replied evenly, and I'm doing just that, legally and responsibly. Carlyle shook his head. You think this moat and that fancy bridge will stop us? We have lawyers, permits, and neighbors on our side. I looked him square in the eye. Then let's see what the law says, because so far this is all within my rights. He said nothing more and left, but I knew the HOA was watching closely. I wasn't just building a moat, I was building a fortress of rights and resilience. As the water settled and the bridge worked flawlessly, I felt a surge of accomplishment. No longer could the HOA block me with cones, signs, or empty threats. Now there was a physical, legal barrier, one I controlled completely. The moat was more than a trench. It was a symbol, and the battle for my driveway had taken a bold, new turn. The moat itself was an impressive barrier, a shimmering water-filled trench that cut across the disputed section of my driveway like a line drawn in the sand. But the real magic, and the key to my mobility, was the automatic bridge. Without it, the moat would have been just a fancy pond blocking my way. Designing and building the bridge was an adventure all on its own, a blend of modern technology and old-fashioned ingenuity. From the start, I knew this bridge had to be reliable, secure, and user-friendly. I didn't want to wrestle with complicated controls every time I needed to come or go, especially during the harsh winters that hit the ridge. It had to be a system that worked with the push of a button, instantly and safely. I worked closely with a local engineer named Maya, who specialized in mechanical systems and automation. She was as excited as I was to build something truly unique for a private property. The key, she told me during one of our planning sessions, is integrating safety features. You want sensors to detect anything under the bridge before it lowers, manual overrides if the power goes out, and secure remote access so only authorized users can operate it. Maya sketched out the system on a whiteboard, detailing the motorized arms, hydraulic lifts, and the wireless controls. We discussed materials that would withstand the elements, stainless steel components to prevent rust, treated wood that could handle rain, snow, and sun, and waterproof housings for all electronics. One challenge was power. The remote mountain location had limited access to electricity, and I wasn't about to run expensive cables across the property. Maya suggested solar panels combined with a backup battery system. It was a perfect blend, sustainable, low maintenance, and efficient. While Maya designed the mechanics and electrical system, a skilled carpenter named Pete crafted the bridge itself. Pete was a local legend in the area. He built everything from rustic cabins to elegant furniture, all with an eye for detail and durability. Pete's workshop smelled of fresh-cut cedar and sawdust, and every plank he selected for the bridge was hand-picked for strength and beauty. As the bridge slowly took shape, I began to imagine the moment it would come alive. Installation day arrived, and it was intense. Pete and Maya, along with a small crew, arrived early with the bridge sections, motors, wiring, and tools. We laid the bridge carefully over the moat, anchoring it securely into reinforced concrete bases on either side. The motorized hydraulic system was installed beneath, invisible to anyone but critical to the bridge's function. Then came the nerve-wracking test. Maya held the remote control in her hand, the sleek black fob with a single button. With a dramatic pause, she pressed it. The bridge responded immediately, lifting smoothly and silently to a vertical position, exposing the water below like a drawbridge guarding a castle gate. We all cheered. Lowering it back down, the bridge settled precisely into place, creating a stable path. The control system was encrypted, with multiple layers of security to prevent hacking or accidental activation. I practiced using the remote, pressing the button as I pulled up in my truck, watching the bridge rise to let me through, then lowering back automatically behind me. It was surreal. The feeling of control, the knowledge that I could come and go on my terms, protected by a moat and a bridge no one else could operate. Beyond functionality, the bridge became a source of pride. It was a physical manifestation of my fight against the HOA's overreach. I even installed LED lights along the bridge's edges for nighttime use, giving it an almost magical glow in the dark. Neighbors began stopping by, curious about the new structure. Some asked if it was a joke, others admired the clever engineering. Ellis was especially proud. "Man, you've got yourself a real fortress now," he said, grinning. "Who needs a castle when you've got a moat and an automatic bridge?" Despite the success, I knew the HOA wouldn't back down easily. I kept detailed logs of the installation process, the safety tests, and all maintenance activities. I wanted to be prepared in case they challenged the bridge's legality or safety. Sure enough, a few weeks later, I received a formal complaint from the HOA. They claimed the bridge was an eyesore, potentially unsafe, and violated community aesthetics rules. But I was ready. I responded with evidence, engineering certifications, building permits, safety inspections, and letters from the county endorsing the project. The HOA was forced to back off. The moat and bridge weren't just defenses, they were shields forged by research, creativity, and determination. I had turned a simple driveway dispute into a lesson in innovation and legal savvy. And every time I pressed that remote button, watching the bridge rise and fall, I felt a small victory, a reminder that sometimes the best defense is a well-designed offense. After the moat and automatic bridge were completed, I expected some resistance from the HOA, but I underestimated just how far they would go. The HOA wasn't about to surrender control over the driveway or their authority without a fight. What followed was a whirlwind of legal threats, neighborhood gossip, and a community torn between siding with me or siding with the HOA. Almost immediately after the bridge was operational, the HOA board sent a formal letter to my door. The tone was stern and formal, accusing me of violating HOA rules and threatening legal action if I didn't remove the moat and bridge immediately. They claimed the structures were unsafe and an eyesore that devalued neighboring properties. I wasn't surprised. What caught me off guard was the reaction from some neighbors. The community, already divided by this dispute, began to fracture further. Some residents expressed support for me, applauding my creativity and assertiveness in defending my rights. Others whispered concerns that the moat and bridge were excessive or dangerous, echoing the HOA's official complaints. Local forums and group chats buzzed with heated debates. A few neighbors even organized an informal petition asking the HOA to restore community harmony by demanding the moat's removal. This was more than a property dispute now. It was a battle for the soul of the neighborhood. To counter the HOA's accusations, I consulted with a property lawyer named Jenna, known for her expertise in HOA conflicts. She reviewed every document, the permits, engineering plans, correspondence with the county, and the HOA's bylaws. "It's clear you acted within your rights," Jenna said. "The HOA can't just dictate your property use arbitrarily, especially when you have permits and have met all safety standards." She advised me to respond firmly but diplomatically, emphasizing the legality of the moat and bridge and inviting the HOA to mediation instead of costly litigation. I drafted a detailed letter, attaching copies of all relevant documents and certifications. I invited the HOA board to a community meeting to discuss the issue openly. The HOA's reply was dismissive. They refused mediation and escalated the matter by hiring a law firm specializing in property disputes. Legal notices started arriving regularly, filled with jargon and warnings. The HOA claimed the moat restricted access to shared community areas, and that the bridge's operation was a nuisance. I hired Jenna to represent me, and we filed a counterclaim asserting my rights to maintain the moat and bridge as legal and necessary protections. Meanwhile, the community drama intensified. Some neighbors invited me over to explain the project and show them how the bridge worked. Once they saw it firsthand and understood the safety features, many expressed their support. Others remained skeptical or fearful, convinced the HOA was right. Even Ellis, usually my staunchest ally, grew concerned about the long-term impact on community relations. "This isn't just about the driveway anymore," he said one evening over a campfire. "It's about keeping peace. You sure this fight is worth it?" I nodded. "It has to be. It's about standing up for what's mine and making sure no one else can just take it away." Behind the scenes, Jenna and I prepared for what could be a lengthy legal battle. We gathered expert witnesses, documented every aspect of the moat and bridge's construction, and began assembling evidence of the HOA's history of overreach. The HOA's attorney responded with aggressive motions, attempting to delay court proceedings and demanding expensive inspections and appraisals. The tension was exhausting. I found myself balancing the technical side of the fight with the emotional toll, the stress, the sleepless nights, and the strain on relationships. But even as the legal wrangling dragged on, the moat and bridge stood firm, a daily reminder that I wasn't backing down. The HOA's stubbornness only made me more determined. Community meetings became battlegrounds of words and accusations, with board members refusing to acknowledge my rights. Still, some neighbors spoke out on my behalf, urging the HOA to find a peaceful resolution. One elderly woman, Mrs. Thompson, even sent a letter praising the moat as a creative solution that respected property rights. Her support was a small but meaningful victory. As the case moved toward court, tensions in the neighborhood simmered beneath the surface. I knew that regardless of the outcome, the dispute had changed the community forever. But for now, my focus was clear: protect my property, stand firm against the HOA's bullying, and show that innovation and legality could beat intimidation. Just when the tension with the HOA was reaching a boiling point, something unexpected happened. I started to find allies in places I never anticipated. Sometimes, when you take a stand, it inspires others who feel powerless or overlooked to step forward. My moat and automatic bridge became a symbol not just of property rights, but of resistance against heavy-handed control. At first, I assumed the neighborhood was divided strictly between HOA loyalists and people like me, caught in the middle of the fight. But as the legal battles dragged on, I discovered support coming from surprising directions. One afternoon, as I was working on fine-tuning the bridge's motor system, I heard a knock on my cabin door. It was Ray, a grizzled old-timer who'd lived in the area for decades, long before the HOA existed. Ray was the kind of guy who didn't say much, but when he did, people listened. He was known for his deep knowledge of property rights and local land laws. "I heard about your moat," he said, eyes twinkling. "Pretty clever. Folks around here have been fighting those HOA types for years." We talked for hours that day, and Ray shared stories about similar disputes in the county. Neighbors pushed around by boards trying to consolidate power and restrict freedoms. He offered to help, connecting me with a network of property owners who'd faced similar battles and come out victorious. Encouraged by Ray's support, I began attending local landowner meetings and forums, where I met others who had been quietly chafing under HOA rules. One woman, Lisa, owned a farm just outside the development. She told me about how the HOA had tried to restrict her livestock and control her fencing choices. Another man, Greg, had fought to keep a small workshop on his property despite zoning complaints. These folks understood what I was going through. Together, we formed an informal alliance, a group of residents dedicated to standing up against restrictive HOA policies and preserving private property rights. We exchanged advice, shared legal resources, and even pooled funds to help cover attorney fees. The alliance gave me a sense of strength and community I hadn't expected. Suddenly, I wasn't fighting alone. Even some neighbors who had been wary before began to soften. At a community barbecue, I demonstrated how the automatic bridge worked and explained the legal steps I'd taken to ensure everything was above board. Seeing the engineering and hearing the story firsthand changed many minds. Mrs. Thompson, the elderly neighbor who had written a supportive letter earlier, brought other residents to see the moat. One young couple, the Parkers, approached me after the event. "We were skeptical at first," Mrs. Parker said, "but now we see you've done everything right and this moat is actually kind of cool. You've got our support." Meanwhile, the Alliance began advocating publicly, writing letters to local newspapers and attending HOA meetings to voice concerns about the board's actions. The HOA tried to dismiss us as a small fringe group, but our numbers grew and with them, our influence. Even the local sheriff's office took notice after receiving several calls about disputes related to the moat and driveway. They advised both sides to keep interactions civil and reminded the HOA that I had every legal right to access my property. Perhaps most surprisingly, some younger HOA board members started to question their leadership's aggressive stance. At one meeting, a new board member suggested exploring mediation and compromise, a stark contrast to the board president's hardline approach. This small opening gave me hope. Despite the ongoing legal battles, these unexpected allies proved that resilience could breed community as much as conflict could breed division. It was a reminder that sometimes standing firm invites others to stand with you. The moat and bridge weren't just barriers to block the HOA. They became bridges connecting me to a larger cause. Together, we were redefining what it meant to be neighbors, and that gave me strength to face whatever came next. The day of the court hearing arrived faster than I expected. Months of tension, negotiations, and legal wrangling had all led to this moment, a chance to stand face to face with the HOA's representatives and defend not just my moat and bridge, but my fundamental right to protect my property. The courthouse was a modest building nestled at the edge of town, its brick facade worn by time, but dignified in its purpose. Walking through those doors, I felt a mix of nerves and determination. I had poured everything, time, money, energy, and heart, into this fight, and I wasn't about to let it slip away now. Jenna, my lawyer, was calm and focused as ever. She had reviewed every detail of the case repeatedly, anticipating every possible argument the HOA's lawyers might throw our way. "We're ready," she said, offering me a reassuring smile. "We know the law, and we have the facts." The courtroom was small but packed. I recognized some neighbors in the seats, allies who had come to support me, along with a few curious onlookers and even some skeptics. When the HOA board members and their attorneys arrived, their expressions were tight, formal. Their confidence seemed intact, but I sensed cracks beneath the surface. The hearing began with opening statements. The HOA's attorney argued that the moat and automatic bridge were unauthorized alterations to common property that posed safety risks and violated community guidelines. Their tone was authoritative, but lacking in specifics. They attempted to paint me as a troublemaker disregarding community welfare. Then Jenna took the floor. She spoke clearly and passionately, emphasizing the extensive legal steps I had taken, securing permits, complying with zoning laws, and ensuring safety through engineering oversight. She presented detailed documentation, including expert testimonies confirming that the moat was environmentally sound. The bridge met all safety codes, and my actions were well within my property rights. One of the experts was Maya, the engineer who designed the bridge's automation. She testified about the safety sensors, hydraulic systems, and the rigorous testing process. Her technical explanations impressed the judge and reinforced the credibility of my project. Next, Jenna highlighted the HOA's history of overreach and attempts to intimidate me, suggesting that their objections were more about control than genuine safety concerns. Throughout the proceedings, I kept my composure. I knew emotions ran high on both sides, but I wanted the judge to see me as a reasonable homeowner defending what was rightfully mine. Several neighbors were called to testify. Some spoke in my favor, describing how the moat and bridge improved security and didn't harm the community's character. Others echoed the HOA's concerns, but their voices were fewer and less persuasive. During cross-examination, the HOA's lawyers tried to poke holes in the engineering reports and questioned the impact on community aesthetics. Jenna skillfully countered every point, bringing the focus back to the facts and legality. After hours of arguments and testimony, the judge took a recess to review the evidence. I stepped outside into the cool air, heart pounding but hopeful. When court resumed, the judge delivered her ruling. The moat and automatic bridge were legal, safe, and did not violate any community regulations. She ordered the HOA to cease any attempts to remove or block access to the moat and bridge and warned them against future harassment. Relief flooded through me. The judge's decision was a victory, not just for me, but for anyone facing unfair restrictions on their property rights. The courtroom erupted in quiet applause from my supporters. Even some HOA board members exchanged uneasy glances, their plan foiled. Walking out of the courthouse, I felt a profound sense of justice and closure. The moat, once a symbol of conflict, had become a shield of rights. The bridge, once a point of contention, was now a bridge to peace. While the road ahead might still have challenges, this victory was a turning point. I had stood my ground, armed with facts, determination, and the law. And I had won. The courtroom victory brought a profound sense of relief, but it also marked the beginning of a new chapter, one where I could finally live freely without the constant fear of my access being blocked. For months, my driveway dispute with the HOA had consumed me, draining my energy and testing my resolve. Now, standing behind my moat and automatic bridge, I felt a peace I hadn't known in a long time. In the weeks following the judge's ruling, the HOA gradually ceased their aggressive tactics. No more threatening letters, no more locked gates, no more surprise visits from board members or their legal counsel. It was as if my moat wasn't just a physical barrier, but a psychological one, signaling that I wasn't someone to be pushed around. My daily routine returned to normal. I drove across the automatic bridge every morning, the familiar press of the remote button, lifting the wooden span effortlessly. Sometimes I'd pause for a moment and watch the water ripple beneath the bridge, reflecting sunlight in dancing patterns. It was a quiet reminder of the journey that had brought me here, a journey filled with conflict, creativity, and courage. The community began to heal too. The neighbors who had opposed me or the project started to soften their stance. Some even complimented the moat's aesthetic, noting how it added a unique charm to the landscape. The LED lights lining the bridge became a talking point during evening walks, admired for their subtle glow and thoughtful design. Ellis, ever the loyal friend, stopped by often. We'd sit around the campfire sharing stories, laughing about the battles past, and dreaming about future projects, ones built on collaboration rather than confrontation. I also took time to maintain and improve the moat and bridge. Seasonal cleanups ensured the water stayed clear and fresh, and I installed a new solar-powered water circulation pump to prevent stagnation. The bridge's motor system was regularly inspected and lubricated, guaranteeing smooth operation even through the harshest winters. Most importantly, I documented everything, this time not as a shield against conflict, but as a celebration of what I had built, a home fortified by more than just walls. The legal battle left its mark on me, though. It taught me valuable lessons about standing up for one's rights, the importance of knowing the law, and the power of persistence. It also revealed how fragile community trust could be and how vital open communication was in resolving disputes before they escalated. To foster better relations, I organized a neighborhood gathering on my property, inviting residents from both sides of the dispute. We shared food, stories, and laughter under the stars. The moat and bridge became symbols not of division, but of resilience and creativity. People saw that disputes didn't have to end in bitterness. They could lead to understanding and even friendship. The HOA, for its part, slowly shifted its tone. New board members were elected, promising more transparency and a commitment to fairness. The old hardliners who had fought me tooth and nail quietly stepped aside. Looking back, I realized the moat and bridge were never just about blocking access. They were about asserting my independence and refusing to be silenced or controlled. Now, as I watched the sunset paint the sky from my cabin porch, I felt a deep sense of accomplishment. I had reclaimed my home, on my terms. The moat was no longer a battleground, but a peaceful moat, protecting a sanctuary. The automatic bridge was no longer a symbol of conflict, but a gateway to freedom. And I knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, I was ready. Because sometimes standing your ground means more than winning a fight. It means creating a life where you can live freely and peacefully.